All right. So
All right, Nina.
we kind of want to get want to go over just kind of some of the I have an agenda on here that we're going to go over just like the changes for this year, some like rule changes that are very specific to this online year, and then move on to kind of the best practices that the committee has kind of
Is the litter done?
figured out with the questions that we
I don't
came
know
up
why
with
it's
that
coming
we
through.
answered.
I've got the,
So we so we'll go over some of that, and then I think that your questions and answers are going to be the last part of what we end up doing. So first off, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Danielle Tier. I coach at Bloomfield Hills High School. I am the chair of the IE committee this year. Joining me today from the IE committee, we have Abby Urbanowski. They're in the, I don't know where she is on your screen, just right in the middle of mine. And also Zaz, who is in the screen with Becca at the moment, and now it's not. Now he's in his screen. And we're your representatives that are here tonight from the IE committee to hopefully answer your questions or at least give you some insight as to why some decisions like were made or the conversations that were made around them. And then also we see the entire office staff is here as well. We have our executive director, John Becker. We also have our membership coordinator. We have there Courtney Bassett, and our I don't even know what your actual real title is, like money and knows all the stuff, Becca Weissman.
Business director.
She's the business manager.
Business manager. Sorry, I should know that.
Grand Wazoo.
It definitely does a lot more too. Yes. So great. So those are the people here, and the rest of you, you may know each other, but from looking around, a bunch of coaches and some judges. So here we are to try to figure out what we're going to do during this time with our lovely team. So let's move right on in to broadcasting. So very similar to the typical or the newish middle level model that we moved to for this year. The big change is that the contestants will be prepping their stories in advance for the most part of their broadcast. And the only thing that they will be given during their 15-minute prep period is the editorial story. So the story they have to include and that they will write their 1-minute editorial about. So that's still the same. The only difference is all the stuff around it is going to be prepped in advance. And that a student may choose to repeat that same packet with just a different editorial for each round, or they might have a whole different packet for each round depending on what they want to do. But they are allowed to use essentially the same materials for each round if they choose, or do more. Are you not seeing my my PowerPoint? No, you guys are? Okay.
See it.
No, I just see a big green
see it.
phone.
I don't know. I don't know.
Why
Why.
decide to
Hey,
go?
Danielle, just to add on that, and contestants can use the same material from week to week as well. Not recommended, but it's not prohibited.
Correct.
Oh,
Why did we decide? Why
I
did
got
we
the
decide?
PowerPoint back. Okay, I'm good.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
just
Chris.
to Coolman's question in the chat, which is, can you put questions there? Yeah, please do. That'd probably be the easiest way for us to try to moderate them. If you have questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll try to make sure they get addressed.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
I will share this PowerPoint with you guys at the end of the presentation. Not that it has a lot, but it has some links in it that you might want to access later. For example, the ballot for broadcasting. Make sure that you're directing your students and your coaches to the high school broadcasting online version of this ballot. And it just explains what the event is, the same as every other ballot, and it just tells you the difference. Everything else is the same. It's still 5 minutes. We're still looking for that suggested time of a 1-minute editorial. And everything else is essentially the same. And it's just about how the preparation, or when the preparation happens, is not in the 30-minute period. It's in a unlimited prior period, and then a 15-minute period for the editorial inclusion and writing.
So,
No, Chris, it's going to be more like it's in the middle school version, right? Yes, you can find all of these changes on the MIFA site, but don't tell. Sometimes I have a hard time finding things on the MIFA site. So that's why I linked the things that I could here for you to find. And you can use this as a way for you to reference. So that's broadcasting. So that's a big change. And yes, the editorial will change every round. So that'll be a new thing prepped every time for each round you advance to. So that's new and different. So students will have to consider, like, not only how they want to write their editorial during that time, but where they want to place it in their broadcast. So they might have to, make some adjustments to how they have prepped already, like what they've prepped, where they are going to place that. Oh, I stopped screen sharing. Sorry. Really wanted you guys to see this. Okay, there you go. Now I lost my chat. All right. Okay, so next changes have to deal with duo and multiple. I kind of separate duo and multiple, and then multiple separately, because there's some things that apply to both duo and multiple. And the biggest thing is how you can choose to perform these events. And we try to offer options so that teams could make the best decisions for themselves, but also place some restrictions that made them similar to each other, but also safe, right? Like, we wanted to make sure that we're providing a safe situation for everyone involved throughout the course of the season, as we have no idea what the future holds, right? So the two different options for performance is students can be in the same physical location, or they can be like this, how we are now, in different locations on Zoom. If they choose to be in the same location, they must remain 6 feet apart. They must be masked. They have to keep their movement within a 36-inch circle. So imagine a big hula hoop on the ground, and you just can't walk outside of that. That avoids the crossing possibilities and judges having to consider whether or not, are they still 6 feet apart? Are they moving? You don't have to, it just keeps them separate. And because of all of the, aerosol issues with this particular virus, even being masked, we are not allowing singing, beatboxing, or whistling, because those are making noise, they spit type activities, if you choose the in-person option. And I didn't write this on here. I probably should have, but it's definitely on the FAQ. Everybody has to be in the frame at one time. Or at all times. So you'd have to find a way to set up your recording device in a way that you could see all, 2 members if it's a duo, or 3 to 5 members if it is a multiple, if you choose the in-person option. If you choose the different location options, then really the only restriction is that we wanted to maintain the consistency of movement, that they are still within that hula hoop, that 36-inch circle. So they're still not doing cartwheels and running around the space because the other people can't. But singing, any kind of that is fine. You don't have to be masked if you're by yourself. So that is fine for if you are in different locations for duo and multiple. Okay. So the question about the script choices for multiple is that this year it is unlimited. So you can choose whatever you want to do. So it's the way that the multiple materials go. It goes from being restricted to not allowing musical film or musical theater scripts to not being restricted at all. So this year we're unrestricted. Anybody can do whatever they want. And that means that if they are in person and they choose a musical script, they just won't be doing the singing, beatboxing, or whistling portions of that. Humming would be an appropriate choice if they wanted to hum under their masks, because that doesn't provide spit. Or they could choose the different location version if they wanted to provide music in one of those other forms as a group. And as we know, the musical film script or musical theater script does not preclude the fact that there is often music and singing every year. So it really wouldn't, by changing the preclusion, wouldn't necessarily change the outcome of what the students do. Oh my God. So which way the duos face? No, I mean, that's going to be up to your practicing. I mean, I guess I would suggest to my team that they do more of a frontward, you know, blocking style, more of like the national style rather than the cross focal point style, just because you don't know where they're going to line up. And they could be, when you think they're doing this, they could be doing that. So that would be my suggestion, but that's obviously not a rule. So that would just be my my suggestion to you.
Danielle, would it be helpful to you if, because we're answering some questions in the chat too, if after you do an event, I just feed some of them to you from the chat so you don't have to go back and forth? Would that be helpful? All right, so you tell me when you've said your spiel about an event, and then I'll try to cover some of the questions we haven't typed answers to. Perfect.
So the other, just the only other thing about multiple is that we have also asked them, we have reduced the cast size to 3 to 5 to offer a better ability for if you choose the in-person option to be able to actually see the 3 to 5 people if you have to, because you need to have one stationary camera seeing all of those people. All right, so that's what I have for this slide. So any other questions that I can answer for those?
Yep. So I'm going to go with Kagan's question. In the all virtual option, are contestants allowed to dictate their arrangement on the screen? Or is it up to solo order? I believe he's referring to the fact that we can move camera panels around.
Oh, I see what you mean. We talked about that, and we also decided that it might be too much of a burden on our judges who are also going to be learning a whole lot of things right now. Yep. And I don't believe it's an option for us if we move into the NSDA campus to move them around. So if so we wouldn't be able to guarantee it.
Yep.
So
sorry, yep. Zaz did touch on that. We also have a couple questions about duo and multiple performers from the same family that I don't know that we actually have an answer to yet at this point in time. But
no, we did talk about that in committee, and still have to follow the same rules. Like I have some twin girls who are going to be doing a duo like they've done the last couple of years, and I told them that, you know, it's only fair, right, that they follow the same rules. If they want to be in the same space with each other, they need to be masked, right? They need to keep their distance, even though, you know, they technically don't have to, but just to keep that consistency. But if they wanted to go into different rooms in their house and Zoom separately, then they could, and then not have to be masked if that is something they're trying to avoid.
Okay. We've touched on a lot of the other ones. You can keep putting them in and I'll keep moderating them. And then we are also keeping a transcript of these questions too, so that we can update our FAQ as well, right? So.
Did I get all the or did somebody answer all the broadcasting questions? Because I kind of just rolled right past that into the duo.
We've answered a lot of the broadcasting questions in the chat. If yours didn't get answered and you want to bump it again and in the chat, I'll make sure that we address it again.
All right. So the next part here is about our best practices or FAQ document. So the first thing I would like to mention is that this is a living document, and we will be continually updating it when situations call for it. And when, you know, if things change. And also, as you guys ask questions, like, and we will realize that other people might have those same questions, so we can add those to this document as well. So I see that there's more, some of these broadcasting questions came up here again. So before I go into that, we can do that.
Sure. And I was typing a couple answers. I'm sorry, I wasn't on mute.
That's okay.
I just typed this one, but how will students receive the article for editorial, impromptu extemp? And I'll just go ahead and read my answer, Danielle. I said, we're still working on that process, but will most likely be electronically through direct chat or link sharing. Yep. Those are
I
the-
see Tim says, why go to the pre-written format for broadcasting? And we do know that this is a topic that we've actually been talking about for years, actually, the possible changes to broadcasting. And just know that this is only a 1-year change for now, right? Like everything that we're talking about is for this, or hopefully, goodness, for this year. It's for online tournaments. And there was a lot that went into this particular decision. And I think that for the most part, it was allowing students to at least have a semblance of fairness too. That like that if we were to share a packet with one person, it would be very easy digitally to share that out to everybody else on your team, right? And they could get extra time. This way they could focus their prep in advance. And then we still get to see some, their thought process in a shortened period of time. With the 15 minutes to write the editorial. They still have to make some organizational choices during that 15 minutes. And quite honestly, it's kind of neat to see what they come up with when they get to choose from anything in the world too. Now, after this year, we're gonna have some feedback that we can use to decide if this is something that students like, or maybe they don't like, if the coaches like it or don't like it. This actually gives us better feedback than just our surveys asking what if questions. And I think it suits for a format. That's what the committee ultimately came up with, that it does suit the format. And we believe that it will still show us a lot of the same skills and maybe some more different skills as well.
Danielle, I had a chance to scroll back through and we didn't, unless I missed it, we didn't answer this directly. The eligibility for teams to use a musical script is still offered this year. You discussed the singing, but comment that the restriction doesn't really allow for full use of musical. Did the IE committee consider pushing the eligibility for musical scripts to next year?
I thought I answered that.
Did you?
Whoever,
Okay.
whoever asked that question, did you feel like you got an answer to that? Okay.
Good.
All right. Yes, the FAQ document is also located on the MIFA.org. You can find it under the IE page. So if you go to events IE, it's there. But also when I send you this, it's going to be linked right here. Isn't that exciting? But remember, it is in fact a living document. So I suggest if you are a coach, you should probably be checking this often. If there's like a huge rule change, we're obviously going to communicate that out to you. But little nuances will be added. And I think that it should be, we should all take the onus on ourselves to make sure that we are keeping up with the craziness of this year. We are doing our darndest to make this easy for you and to make it easy-ish for the kids, but still really, really meaningful. So that's where we are with this. So I'm going to kind of go over these topics. I'll stop every couple just to see if you guys have any questions or clarification. So the first one is kind of tricky because like, what are we doing with these tournaments? Well, I don't know. Like, and we don't know now, but we know a couple options of what will happen. And the main options that seem to be on the table right now are using Zoom for our virtual conferencing and using breakout rooms within Zoom for competition. I know that Debate has had some success using this in the middle school tournament, also use Zoom. And then NSDA has a platform that is called Campus, and that's another option. And it has some great points that it connects with Tabroom directly. So it works, it shoots you out to your rooms based on the schematic. The judges are already also there, and they're connects with their critiques and into their scoring, and everything is kind of connected. But it does also have some drawbacks, like you can't do screen sharing on that, and you can't like move people around like we were talking about earlier either. And so depending on what method it ends up being used for different tournaments, you might have to make some adjustments. And some of those are like, if we are using Campus, you're going to have all your kids register for a tabroom.com account. And like, you'll have to register your team through that too. What else?
You have to link all
So-
of your, I'm sorry, are you
So-
these are campus concerns, campus questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're on campus, I mean, obviously all of your judges will have to be part of your tab room. Whether we're on Zoom or campus, your judges are going to have a tab room account, because that's the way we've worked out to do online balloting and scoring and critique sheets. If we're using the campus platform for the video conferencing, all of your contestants will have to have a linked account. And that simply means that they've provided their email, and then the coach goes in and says, yes, this student is on my team, and it links them to their team. It only has to be done once. A lot of this stuff only has to be done once. So much, unlike Less Mana, you'll only put your kids onto your roster one time. Like, you'll only type your kids' names one time, but then when it's time to sign up for a tournament, you'll say this kid, this kid, this kid, and this kid go, and this is my judge. So in that sense, that's easier. But you do have to have them all linked. If we're on the Zoom platform, what's different is that then we need to create a simple way to quickly identify everyone so that we can assign them into break rooms. And so what that requires is renaming. So if you're looking at your little video panel, put your mouse on your face, and the three little dots at the top right of your image, click on that and choose rename. And then students would end up renaming themselves, like, storytelling B26, Becker, like this. So let's see how my name is now. And that way, when they all start popping into the list to be assigned, everyone who's in the same event is together. This process we found with debate works very well. It's just slightly time consuming because, basically instead of your general meeting and that sort of thing, you spend a half an hour getting everyone to get their name coded correctly.
And regardless, I'm just going to take a minute to show you Tab Room, regardless of what platform we start using to actually host the tournament. Chances are a lot of events will be using tabroom.com for judging and tabulation. We know that we will be on the MIFA end, at least. So if you participated at all in the spring or at the OLLI, or have any experience with debate or middle level, you are familiar with Tab Room. But if that's not something that you have done before, then this is something that you can do it's something you can do over break while you're still getting ready to start meeting with your team. So tabroom.com, you're going to need to create an account for your school on here if you don't already have one. And it's a pretty easy process. In fact, we will send out some tutorials, but YouTube actually has a video for pretty much anything you need to know about Tab Room. If you search, sorry, it's my dryer. If you search Tab Room, account creation, you're going to get a 2-minute video that will show you how to do that. But once you create an account, you will log into that as a coach. And regardless of whether we're using the NSDA campus or the Zoom room platform, you'll need an account on here in which you're keeping a team roster. So that, was the biggest step for many of you in the spring, was to get used to the fact that now you have to house a list of all of your competitors here on tabroom.com. But once you do, it's pretty organized. You have the school that you coach for, and you have the list of all of the students who compete on your team. And you also will need to create a list, a roster for all of your judges. Now, for sure, judges are going to need to create their own tab room accounts as judges. So even though we're not telling you yet for sure that you need students with linked accounts, you will definitely need judges with linked accounts. So if you have a list of people that you typically use as judges, it's a good idea to have them set up their own accounts now, because they will get, this is how they'll get their ballots. And when they fill out their critique sheets and put in scores and know what rounds they're judging, all of that information comes to them in Tab Room and to the linked phone number and email that they have within this platform. So when you do go to make your roster, especially this year, and if you talk to me a lot about this in the spring, I'm changing my tune a little bit. Try to be as comprehensive and as detailed in the answers that you give as possible. Now, Tab Room asks for a lot of information about a student. A lot of these features are very cool. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we had the phonetic pronunciation of every student's name? But for sure, make sure that you are putting in the correct name. It is great if you can save yourself some time and get them linked with an email address. They would need to create an account, and then also their correct graduation year, because that way you will be creating as up-to-date a roster as possible. You want to avoid having duplicates on your roster. So if you look at your list from last year, you want to try to, either edit it or only add in your new students, although there are features over here like deduplicate students that are going to help you remove duplicates. But that is something that you can do now while you are getting ready for the season to start. Cool things about having students with linked accounts is that they can then be tied to their own feedback and ballot sheets, and they can have access to their own critiques electronically without you having to email them out afterwards. Is one of the many features that Tab Room is going to allow you to have. If you have multiple coaches, I give access to anyone apparently here, but you can add all of the coaches that you want to be able to log in and do things for your team, like see your results, or be able to make changes, adds, drops, registration. So it's a good idea to always have your assistant coaches listed on here as well. But this is where you'll register for tournaments and all of those things. So the sooner you do that, then the less stressed you're going to be the night that registration is due, and you're trying to get all of that in by the deadline and you can't remember all of your students' names. But while I'm on here, if you can just see real quick, these video icons over here, this is what it looks like if we were to host a tournament on NSDA campus. Their rounds, their schematic that they would look at has a little video icon on it, like it says right here by test rooms, and they press that and it enters them into the video conferencing platform for the room. John, anything else while I'm on here that I'm not thinking of or that you would like me to click on?
I mean, if you want to click into you want to click into the test room just so they can see, but I mean, it'll be kind of weird because there'll be a world inside of a world, but it's I mean, it looks just like Zoom. It's just it runs on a Zoom like app called Jitsi Meet, and NSDA has just contracted to have their skin put over the top of it. But they do have some options that you can chat, you can share evidence, which is obviously much more relevant for debate, but might be relevant for file sharing, for putting out extemp prompts or impromptu prompts or that sort of thing. And they can ask for help, that sort of thing. So other than that, it's essentially like Zoom. We had some issues when we first tried it in September. We ran Deb's Dexter debate tournament on it a couple weeks ago. We ran the state debate tournament on it this last weekend. It was very stable. They seem to have worked out the vast majority of the bugs. As long as the students are linked, it's working very well. 97% of the problems were solved by saying, click out of this, window and come back into it, reload it, turn it off, turn it back on, fixed almost everything. You do have to run in Chrome. You absolutely have to use Chrome. That's the one critical sticking point. If your students are using an iPad or an iPhone or any other kind of device, not just like a laptop or a Chromebook, they may have to use the app version as opposed to the web version. But you know, these are minor hurdles that we can get them through.
Yep. And so if you are a coach who also is a judge, you can have the same account for both. And like I just clicked on my history of judging, and I have tournaments that I've judged at here before in the past. Also, when you are using Tabroom, you know, you can go back into tournaments that you attended. So, well, this is not helpful, but if I log into my other account here, and you're familiar with this with Tabroom if you've used it before, but you can go back into tournaments, and this is where the results will always be held. And so it's, you know, similar to how many of you might have been looking on Less Mana. You can go back in here and see the different events and how students placed, and click directly into their ballots and read them if they're a member of your team. So that is a quick show around Tabroom. So one more time, just to be repetitive, the sooner you make your accounts and start making your rosters, the easier your season is going to be. Yeah, Danielle, what's next? Did you want me to talk judge cert?
We can get there later, I think.
Okay.
Let's go through this. All right. So again, I'm kind of hoping that I can, you know, talk to John soonish about maybe making some more firm commitments to what platform we're going to use, because there are some, as we get through some of these other things coming up, there are some restrictions and issues in each different platform. So the sooner that we can tell you at least what MIFA is doing, which will then maybe affect what the invitationals do, because again, remember, invitationals get to choose their own rules. They often choose MIFA, but they don't have to. And the MIFA will be running several of the invitationals this year, but not all of them. So you do need to pay attention to the invites to know exactly how they're going to be run, so you know what you can do. But I'm hoping that we can nail down some, you know, real specifics for you very shortly. Yes, John.
Yeah, I mean, exactly to that end, like whatever platform we land on and use for the Punxsutawney, it's my hope that that's like the platform that we use all season, barring like A, it crashing and burning, you know, horribly, or B, some great advance on the platform that we didn't pick, in which case we may migrate. But it will be one of these two things. It will be either Tabroom and NSDA campus, or Tabroom and Zoom breakout rooms.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what technology do you and your students need? Well, you just need a internet capable device, computer, tablet, smartphone with a camera and a microphone and a reliable internet connection. Fortunately, a lot of their students have had to figure this out on the daily for school. So they have these devices, and some people who maybe don't normally have these devices have been provided them from their schools. So there is that. But that's what you need. You need a camera, you need a microphone, and you need a device that hooks to the internet, because that will, and apparently if we use Campus, you need Google Chrome also. That's not written on there, but that'll be needed too. Which comes up with like, can the students compete from school or home? That's not up to us. That's up to you. That's up to the state. That's up to your school rules. Nothing that we say will supersede something that your school tells you to do or that the government tells us to do, obviously. So like right now, you know, we're told that in high school, we're not to go to high school. We're not supposed to be there for extra or co-curricular or anything. So like, you obviously shouldn't do that now. But come end of January, maybe hopefully that restriction's different. And so if it's a good place for your students to compete from different rooms in school because the internet's better, then that's an option that you have. But it's really up to what you want to do with your team and what what the current conditions allow you to be able to do. So could be all in the same-ish place, just separated, or you could all be in your own different homes. So that's kind of fun. And by fun, I mean another fun challenge. So next thing, can performers use virtual backgrounds? Well, So virtual backgrounds would be only available if we were using the Zoom virtual conferencing. That is not something that would be offered in campus. And yes, you would be able to if we are in Zoom, but we suggest that you practice in advance because lots of times like you like kind of ghost out and disappear if you're moving around with a virtual background, and that could be distracting. And in backgrounds and interpretation events may not be used as scenery. In a plain color background is preferable. So again, using your best instincts to say, you don't want to distract from your performance, you want to enhance. However, if we are in Zoom and it is a public address event, do what you want to do. You're kind of allowed to do that kind of stuff. But again, you want to stay pretty focused on what you're saying, what you're competing with, not being distracted. Next, are there restrictions for masks? So for people that are, oh, I'm sorry, would that be considered a visual? Yes, but there is no restriction on visuals in public address, which is why I mentioned it there. But there are restrictions for scenery items and props in Chirp. So that's why it would need to be a plain non-distracting background. I hope that answers that question. So masks, so if you're in person and you need to wear a mask, so like you might have to go to school to compete because the internet's better there for you, but your school might have a rule that says if you're here, you're wearing a mask. I don't care if you're the only person in the room, then you need to follow that rule. Or if you're doing the duo or multiple option where they're competing in the same location, they need to wear a mask. There is a lot of conversation about what this should or shouldn't look like. And we believe that the current costuming and prop rules are as written apply to your masks. Masks are a medical device at this point. So it's the same thing as your insulin pump, your glasses, your cane, your wheelchair, that's what they are. So wear them as you would. Now you can't attach a mustache to it because then you would be costuming yourself, right? Or you could consider that even a prop, like you wouldn't do something like that. And if you wanted to, I don't know, wear one that had something on it that like was indicative of what you were doing, I guess go for it. But I think a plain mask would be preferable because you don't want to be distracting. Like in the same way that you don't dress in costume for interp events, but you might wear a red shirt because you're doing Sweeney Todd and maybe you want a red mask too. Like you can dress do like that. But you wouldn't do anything that would constitute a costume or a prop. Yes, John.
So you also may want to look, there are some of our theater folks are finding some great alternatives options for masks where it essentially has like a foam kind of wraparound, but this portion is clear. So you can still see the person's face or mouth. You can see when they're speaking. And so you just kind of get this band around their mouth or mouth and nose, sorry, like this. Mm-hmm. But it's clear. And that may be something you want to look at. And they're a little on the expensive side if you're buying them in ones. But if you buy, 30 or 100, they become much more, yeah, Becca just put the link in the chat. They become much more affordable in quantity. And yes, they are exactly as weird, but maybe that's a better alternative. I don't know.
Okay, so then are parents and coaches and friends allowed to watch the competition? As we know, there are people that like to come and watch forensics at our tournaments. Unfortunately, no spectators are going to be allowed. One, we can't offer that option if we use campus. And two, we don't believe that it is feasible for us to manage that as well if we in Zoom, because we're already managing all the judges and the students as well. So unfortunately, no, but we are looking at options of possibly being able to figure out how to live stream our breakout rounds so that people could still watch their people. And I don't know exactly where we're at on that. I know Debate was looking into that. So
yeah, we were able to live stream elims of Debate state finals. So we're there. We'll be able to do that. We have some limitations in terms of the number of rounds we can show simultaneously. So, you know, we'll have some issues, but there's also a bunch of other hurdles like getting permissions and all those sorts of things that we'll have to handle at the same time.
So will competitions be recorded at all? Technically, that does not follow our rules. We don't record. So at this time, I'm going to say no. And if a parent wants to see their kid, I would suggest either recording practice, or if they live in the same home, just kind of creepy sitting on the other side of the room, right? On the other side of the camera would do it for you too. But yes, it's worth asking. But unfortunately, no, that could be some issues with copyright and stuff that I don't think any of us want to have to try to deal with. So, okay, what are the expectations for competitors in the round when they are not competing? So when they're being an audience member. So general expectations for audience, same as always. Like, we expect you to be engaged, we expect you to be respectful, all of the code of conduct should still be followed. And then we decided that we wanted to create an environment that was more similar to a in-person tournament, and also like gave the performer some feedback. Because as we know, it's like really hard to, if you're a teacher here, if any of you have been teaching on Zoom, it has been really struggling to be talking a lot and having no response or minimal response, or lots of cameras off, and you're just kind of talking into the void. And so we don't want to put our students necessarily in that position. So our preference is that as audience members, cameras are turned on, mics are turned off. Because mics, you never know when the weird extra distracting noise could happen. But we can still see people reacting. If it's funny, we can see laughter. If we can see that. But if there are there's obvious exceptions to that. That's why it's a preference. That if somebody knows that they have distractions, or that there's potential distractions, it's better for them to turn their camera off, right? So we'd rather have that but we do want all cameras on at the end of each performance so that they can show their appreciation however they want to do so, so that each performer gets a little love at the end of their performances. And again, all mics to be turned off, just because there's more likely an ability for a distracting noise to happen than somebody like streaking across the back of your screen, right?
There may also be some technological reasons why we ask people to turn their cameras off. Like in multiple, it's just going to chew up the bandwidth in the room. So we might just say, only the ones that are performing should have their camera on. Everybody else can have their camera off, and then pop it on when they're done to let them know.
Okay, so moving on to technical difficulties, because again, that happens. So we're trying to be thoughtful in how this would work, but also keep things moving, because we can't pause everything forever. So the general gist of it is the 15-minute rule will apply to tech issues too. We already have it written. So if somebody is not connecting at the beginning or falls out, even in the middle of their performance, falls out, and they can reconnect within 15 minutes, then they can still compete in that round. So it doesn't really hold us up if that happens, and it gives that student the opportunity to reconnect and perform, because that's what they really want to do. Now, if they're unable to reconnect, they can't finish that performance, then we want the minimum score to be a 490 rather than the 400 that would normally be applied. So this would be like a special tech issues minimum score. So they wouldn't necessarily be knocked out of the tournament. It would sting, definitely, but it doesn't say don't try to come back for the next round. So that score. However, if the student has met the minimum suggested time frame for that event and then has issues, then the judge has some discretion. So if you feel like I saw 6.5 minutes of the storytelling piece, and I didn't see the end, but I feel like I have a good gist enough to give more than a 490, then you have that discretion to give a higher score than that. You just cannot go lower than that. And again, we are here to help kids gain confidence. So like, I'm sure every single one of us has had some tech issues over the last, 6 months that we've been dealing with, school and whatnot. Like, we can give a little grace when a little grace is needed for these kids. However, we can't wait a half an hour because that would definitely slow down the tournament. And then the other hundreds of people are being affected negatively too. All right. Okay, so time cards. This might not be everyone's favorite, but because again, judges are being asked to do a lot of things, we are not requiring judges to offer time cards for any events other than limited prep. So for the interp events and for prepared public address, time cards cannot, but that does not preclude them having a timer also in their room or having an actual physical human in the room giving them time cards themselves, so that they have that. Like, that's totally fine. But we as the judge aren't going to do that except for in limited prep and understanding that it's more likely going to be like hand signals than actual cards for many people. Yes, John.
If we do tournaments that do run on campus, the third tab in the Jitsi Meet in the Zoom application is a timer. So like there's an on-screen display of your time as an option.
So that's not necessarily an option for you through the Zoom platform, but you also maybe have it on other devices that you have around, or even on the same device that you're using to present. So that's the deal with time cards. And also we're asking that the students and in extension, you as coaches also show a little grace to the judges, because there could be lag, there could be issues in the time, cards could be, the time signals might be even a little off in limited prep. Not that we don't anyway already make those mistakes in person, but we're just asking also that you have a little grace on your end too, in case the judges, aren't, make a mistake also with tech. All right. So, okay. It looks like there's a lot left, but a lot of this is repeated in each section, so I don't have to say it every time. So we kind of looked at specific things here. So for individual interp events of DI Pros poetry and storytelling, so it's like, how do we set up the camera? So camera needs to remain stationary. The performer needs to be visible in the frame at all times. So this box, when we say frame, that's what this box is. This is the frame. It doesn't say that the entire performer needs to be in the frame at the whole time. So you can keep that in mind if you want to try to be creative. It does say the optimal camera distance would show the performer from head to knees, but that doesn't mean it's going to be that way for the entire 8 minutes either. But that gives us a better indication of what that would look like in a real life like situation, because we see people move around, we see how they're standing, we see all of that. And again, it's optimal, it's not required, but we're giving you some guidance here. And just from working in the broadcasting and filmmaking world the last couple of years, just little tips in here too, is that it's always really best to put, for this type of work, put your camera at the head height, so we're not looking up people's noses, because that seems to be something that we're doing a lot of in school, and that's not fun. Thanks, Liz. And so keeping it straight and at the head height, that will give you the best, most realistic experience, as if the judge was in the room with you. Yes, only one camera, so just one stable camera. Oh, we're getting there for the next part with audio assistance. Can the performer have audio assistance? And the answer is yes. So if a student wants to use, like how I'm talking to you right now through these earbuds, like they are giving you better sound, and we have a chance of actually having the judges hear you better, then absolutely. If you have headphones, even if they're corded, but you have a long enough cord, like that could work. Anything, but you don't have to. Like it's just an option that's out there to help make everybody hear a little bit more clearly if they have that option, if they want to use that option. I got some loud people on my team that probably don't need it. So, and probably don't want to do it. You don't want them to have that. So just, it's an option open to you, not a requirement that you need to use it. But we are sticking with like the no pre-recorded music, sound, or other audio elements. And that's specifically for your interp and your limited prep events. You can have pre-recorded music and sound and whatnot during your prepared public address, obviously, because that is allowed, but that's here. So moving into duo and multiple, same thing for how do you set up the camera? Just remember that all performers need to be seen in the frame if you're doing the in-person option for duo and multiple. And then, you know, are these being offered? Yes, they are, but just in case you're also a middle school coach, middle level was not offering duo or multiple this year. The cast size changed from 3 to 5, duo is still 2. Again, this is a this year, well, duo is always, but the 3 to 5 for multiple is just a this year change. So you don't have to worry about that if that frightens you. Same location, we talked about those already. We talked about how the movement changes already for duo and multiple. All right, so here we get into a little bit of interesting conversation about prepared public address events. We put declamation in here because this really is for both middle level and high school, but we are not offering declamation at the high school level, just so don't be confused by that. But informative, oratory, and sales for our high school level. So what do we got to do about visuals? Well, all regular visual aid rules apply. So if you are going to set up an easel with some boards on it, then you have one easel. Everything that you use must originate on the easel or on the performer. So those are the same rules as always. But we have the option possibly of digital visual aids throughout the season too. And so here's some like big caveats that I feel like I have to say right now. If we go into using the campus platform, then that is not an option. We cannot, well, no, screen sharing is not an option. There are ways that you could do digital visuals. I'll explain that in a minute. But screen sharing or background, not an option for campus. So that's why also, if that's the way that we're going to go, I want to make sure that we communicate that as soon as possible to you, so you know that. But the decision hasn't been made, so I think it's important that we keep the door open for right now, but we will let you know if that changes. We also had some problems at the middle level tournament with students who were able in other situations through the same accounts that they were using to screen share, but for some reason, when they were in the tournament, it wouldn't let them screen share. So, and it wasn't across the board. It wasn't like a whole breakout room couldn't. It would be like a kid in that breakout room who couldn't screen share. And that was unexpected and clearly unexplained. But that doesn't mean tech won't get better and that Zoom hasn't figured it out or won't figure it out. But just like we can't expect to promise you power at a tournament, like if you had something that you wanted to use, we also need to have that caveat that we can't guarantee that you would be able to screen share, which just means that even if we have that option, if we are using Zoom, that everyone needs to have like a backup plan. If that's their first game plan, is to figure out how else they are going to do it. Now, that could be that you have like maybe someone do a digital visual aid and you have like a display, like you have like a TV that you're not using somewhere, and you can have that set up near you and you can use that as an actual digital display next to you. Like you could do that. You could do a projection, like you could do that. Or you could go back to the more traditional physical visual aids and just adjust how you use them based on what we can see in our little frames here. So it's really this is to me, I had a big conversation already today about this because it's very tricky, the visual aids, and that's why I want to make sure that we make a decision that allows you to know to reduce some of the variables potentially. And yes, Ruth, like you would have that 15 minutes to try to reconnect or to connect differently to see if it works. But after that time, if it doesn't, then unfortunately, pick your plan B up or compete without the visuals, which I just don't love that idea. But I think that's the best we have if that's the way that we move forward. To me, it's a little problematic because it's not across the board. It's not even like a whole room. It would just be a singular performer. And but we'll see. Hopefully things are getting better, or we choose a method that doesn't matter. We'll figure that out and we will get back with you, I promise. Okay, again, cameras, same thing. Audio assistance, same thing. Then limited prep. So a lot of this is like our guesswork, trying to figure out exactly how it's going to work. And their best options at the moment is having like multiple breakout rooms, to have one where people go in and it has an adult person in there that's going to help with the drawing of topics. And then they'll go back into more of a room where they can just, you know, turn off their mic or whatever and just do their prep. And then they would go into their competition rooms, you know, and they would have like that virtual hallway for the impromptu kids to kind of wait in before they go into their competition room. It's not perfect, but we're trying to do the best that we can with what we know. And if anything like that, you're like, oh, I have this great idea, we would love to hear it. So, you know, let us know. But right now, basically, there would just kind of be multiple areas for the limited prep kids to kind of sail through for each of their rounds. Same situation with the camera setup and same situation with audio assistance. All right, guys, that brings us to the Q&A. I know a lot of you have been asking your questions along the way, but I'm certain that you have more. So now's the time. What do you got? Oh, when did this group get shy?
Danielle, I just want to say congratulations and thank you to the IE committee and to MIFA. I think that, I mean, under the circumstances, this is really impressive. There's a lot of thought and effort that went into this. And so, you know, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The
Doug, I was going
committee-
to say that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Committee did a lot of work over the summer, like, and really like put in a lot of time. So yes, I appreciate all of their work too. And again, give us grace because, you know, we're figuring it out as we go too and trying to make the best decisions that we think are best for everyone. We did not talk about judge certification at all. So why not talk about it right now? What a grand idea. So there are some things still in the works, but I will kick it off to Courtney as she knows better than I am.
Yep, so we hope to get details out about this as soon as possible. Typically, our January 1st is always like our kickoff date for Judge Cert, but we're hoping to get it out to you a little bit earlier than that. Everybody will still be able to recertify and certify this year, but the process will be obviously completely online. So what that means for initial certification is most likely not a Saturday all day Zoom workshop, but a series of synchronous and asynchronous material that culminates with the judge certification test, as opposed to the more practical live approach that we've been able to take before in the past. In terms of recertification, that process will remain the same, but there is going to be a separate sort of online judging certification that's going to be available and hopefully taken advantage of by all to get ready, but will also be part of recertification and certification this year, if that makes sense. So in terms of planning, I know you like to communicate it to judges as soon as possible. And if anybody from the office disagrees with me here, but you won't need to choose as to whether somebody can judge for you on a Saturday or if they need to attend a workshop on that given Saturday. That's not going to have to be a choice that we make this tournament year. Certification is going to be able to happen outside of when tournaments are occurring on a Saturday. So that's good news. And we hope to offer that material right away in January so that people can get going early. But yes, more questions about that? Or Danielle, anything to add? Did that sort of?
No, we're still kind of in the process of coming up with the topics in which we need to create the materials that are different than normal for you. And some of that can be tailored better if we have a better understanding of the platform that we're likely to be using too. That way it doesn't have to be if we do this, then this. It can just be like, we're doing this. And I think for judges, that's going to be super helpful. Yes, John.
And so, I mean, for debate, we essentially built out like a pretty simple 1-page how to compete and judge. And so we built out like a 1-page for the Zoom platform. It's called the Zoom Room Method. ZRM is what you'll see a lot of the folks talking about around the country. We also built one out for campus, and it just basically tells people, where do they start the day? How do they log in? How do they get to their competition room? What requirements do they need? And it's made to be like a 1-page PDF that you can just forward to your kids. And so you register for the tournament and you give them this document and they should be ideally pretty well good to go. Now, that said, we strongly recommend that you try all these things before just showing up at any tournament. So once you know how the tournament's running, NSDA campus has a try it page on the website. You can go there right now or send your kids there and they can get into the space. They can see if their tech is working. And then same with Zoom. Zoom keeps rolling out updates. In fact, they rolled one out like 2 days before the state debate tournament. And if they had rolled it out a week ahead of time, we might have stuck on Zoom. But the latest is like 5.4.6. It allows a lot of bells and whistles. And so we're just going to keep encouraging people to keep, downloading the latest version.
Chris, I saw that you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a comment or a suggestion as much as it is a question, but one of the things within debate that we kind of started to miss was award ceremonies at the end. And I don't know what you've considered with that. I know that might be very hard with hundreds of students at a tournament. But have you thought about that, or are you thinking about how that might be able to be managed in this situation?
Yes, in fact, we have a couple of things that we're thinking of, and it's all really based on how we can do this. One thing is, it depends on how many kids we have and what our Zoom accounts are allowing for that. Because I know that campus does not have like an option to do something like that. So even if we use campus, we would probably have a Zoom option for awards. Now, one of the options we talked about was if it's a smallish amount of competitors, like the whole tournament, that invite everybody into awards, have, the cameras turned off. And then when you say poetry, then those poets turn on their cameras and we announce that. If it's a tournament that exceeds our size for our Zoom accounts, like one option was possibly having like 2 different award ceremonies. So like maybe one for Interp, one for PA, or doing the live streaming. So getting just the finalists in the Zoom and coaches, and then live streaming that so the rest of their teams and families and whatnot could be a part of it. So those are all options that we've considered, and we just don't know where we sit quite yet. John?
I 100% agree with all of that. And as you know, Chris, one of the things we did this last weekend at Debate States was we started the day with a Zoom for a general meeting and a judge meeting. I think that will continue to be the norm. As Danielle indicated, there is no, large meeting space within the NSDA campus platform. So, just competition rooms. So I think either way, the day is probably going to start on Zoom with general meeting, judge meeting, and then they'll compete either in Zoom breakouts or in campus, and then return to the Zoom for awards. Zoom open all day, and it was just a great place for people to come back if they had questions. We just had somebody kind of monitoring it 24/7. So if there were questions, they could pop in and ask them. We're also, yes, Ruth, we're definitely looking at getting a webinar account because it'll let us handle a lot more people. There just isn't really the opportunity for question and answer. They can type questions into the chat and they can get answered that way. But we're looking at that because obviously for the larger tournaments, we're going to need capacity for more people.
Well, thank you.
I think we would have to give up the one clap. I think it would just be all the people and then everybody gets it.
Yeah, it's the golf clap. Yes, Peggy's got it. There it is. It's the one.
Other questions you guys have? This is still your time.
Don't be shy. Kagan.
Yes, Keegan.
So do we have, as judges, if we're judging a duo round per se, or do we have the authority as a judge in the round to ask every non-performing competitor to turn their video off so that we can highlight the performers better and go against that camera on rule?
For the, I do believe so for group interp. I think we can clarify that. Like we hadn't really considered that previously, but I do think that that is a smart plan. So we can clarify that for the group interp cameras.
And
I do think that the end turn your cameras on to show the appreciation for the performer is still
Right, yeah.
You did, but that could definitely help with judges being able to see the right people, and even if they're next to each other, even if they're not, they don't get to choose how they're next to each other, we can still at least, it's not like one's here and one's down here.
And just go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think the big picture, Kagan, is that like it's still your room, right? Like if you were the judge, if we were in a physical building, it's your room. You are the one that's in charge in that space. And so if that's the way you want it, then that makes sense to me. But understand that, the reason why the committee is encouraging people to leave the cameras on is for the performers. It is for their benefit because people need to react to something, A huge chunk of what we do is this like nonverbal, I can see that you're reacting to what I'm saying. So cuts both ways.
Thank you.
More questions? Yes, I think, Tim, that's exactly why we have really embraced this live competition because they just really didn't like, my kids didn't either. They just felt like they submitted a video and they forgot they were even in a competition. And then they got like an email and they're like, oh, I guess I didn't break, or I did, or, like yes, that was why we really pushed hard to try to make this work as close as we could.
Now they know what teachers feel like when nobody responds.
Right.
Exactly. So Katie's telling us that you can spotlight performance even with other cameras on. So if we're on Zoom, so that's a good thing to know. Always adding more things that for me to figure out. No one ever has their cameras on in my class, so I haven't had to use that.
I just spotlighted Danielle for all of you to show you.
And it told me that you did on my screen even. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Stop the screen share so we can see everybody.
If we're done there.
Stop this.
Ta-da.
Okay. Did that change something? I don't know if it's.
Hey.
I did. Okay, so can you spotlight two people?
You can.
Yeah, it depends on your Zoom update.
Yeah, you have to be, I don't know what level of Zoom you have to be on.
I feel like it's like a video game or something.
Well, the other thing we're
Have we leveled up?
unclear on is, will that extend into the breakout rooms? Will those privileges pass with, to each judge to do that within the breakout room? I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
Yeah,
works in-
the issue is the hosting and co-hosting capabilities. We won't be able to give co-host to all the judges.
to every judge, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's the
All
hang up.
right. Well, so then I'm just gonna reshare here real quick because we're on our last slide. I just shared the slideshow in your in the chat for you, so you guys can save that. And here it's just like here's like a quick find who you need to talk to people. So obviously this is our staff that is here, and then all of your region reps. So hopefully one of those names looks familiar and somebody has been communicating with you recently. Honestly, any one of us can answer questions for any one of you. So like, if you aren't sure, like we're not gonna be like, you're not in region 3, so I can't talk to you. So reach out, ask your questions. I know I'm pretty speedy at responding because I know that when I'm normally asking a forensics question, it's because I'm in crisis and I want an answer quickly. So I try to do that same thing for you guys if I can. So yeah, if there aren't any other questions, then I think it's time to